In this clip, we're going to look at blend trees. So whenever we're talking about animations, we can do a very rudimentary animation like we just did, where we have an idle animation and we're using transitions to go from the idle animation to a walk, and then perhaps we would have another one that actually goes to a run. And there's a tool or a method that we can use called blend trees that will actually allow us to associate multiple animations, and we can drive them through a value. For something like our player, we want him standing still and idling at a value of 0 on that NavMesh agent velocity. But then what we want to do is we would actually like to have the player walk up to a certain speed, and then once the player gets up to an even higher speed to where it looks like he's running, we would like to add a run animation. And this can be done through blend trees. So to do this, let's go to Animator. And inside of here, we're just going to right click and we're going to create state, and then we're going to say new blend tree. Now this is going to look a little bit different. Now with this blend tree, you'll need to double click on it, and it will actually go into another layer in your animator. So the blend tree itself is waiting for you to add a list or an array of animations. So in our case, let's go ahead and click on the Add button, and let's add in a motion field. And let's click on this first motion field, and we're going to add in a clip. You could click on the little selection icon here, and we can add in the idle animation. So here you can see that clip has been added. You can see a preview of it, what it's going to look like. Let's go back to the blend tree. We'll need to add another motion field. So we'll click on Add Motion Field. Now you'll notice that as we start to add multiple motion fields, there is this blend kind of image that comes up here, and it previews how that is going to work. So for us, let's go ahead and add our next animation, and we're going to do the walk animation clip. And then I'm going to add one more motion field. You'll see that this changes one more time, and on this one we're going to use the run. And so what should happen is the higher the value that we get on this blend value, we should actually see it go from idle to walk and then eventually to run. Now we're going to use a parameter, or not a parameter, but a variable to control this blend value. And you can see it right here in the parameters because it was automatically created for us. Let's go ahead and rename this to player velocity. Or you could also do player speed. In our case, I want to use velocity because it makes a lot more sense, because we're allowing the NavMesh agent to drive this value. So we have a value from 0 to 1. And it's important to know that these values can be changed. And so from here, what we're seeing is that we have a threshold that is being given to us. We have a threshold of 0, which is where the idle is going to be. And then at the value of 0.5, we're going to be walking. And then as we go to a value of 1, we'll be full on running. Now, if you want to be able to change these values, you'll need to turn off the automate threshold value. Here we could start to type in these specific values that we want. So it would be beneficial for us if we used part of our script to figure out what those values are for our velocity of our NavMesh agent. So let's go in to our scene view, and actually let's bring up our script. What I want to do is I would like to print out what that velocity actually is. And so below the anim.setBool value, I'm going to just use a temporary line of code, and I'm going to type in print, and then what I want to print is the navmesh agent.velocity. Let's make sure we spell it correctly. Here we go. And then end with a semicolon. So let's hit Control S to save it. And then now, if I were to come in and hit play, we're going to see these values printed here at the bottom. And so I'm going to push that out, and then let's just simply hit play again. Let's go to our console and take a look at what was actually printed out for us. I'm going to tear this out so that way I can see it. Most of it you'll see in a vector 3 form here. So remember, we have x, y, and z value. Typically with our velocity, the character is going to be moving in the z direction. And so you can see here that most of this is doing pretty well. We do have a velocity that ends up reaching close to 5. And so I would say that that is the full-on sprint of the character. And so what we can do is we could start to modify these values right in here. So I would say at the peak, let's do a run at a value of 4. And then let's start our walk at a value of 0.3, as you can see right there. So most of the time, our player is going to be running. But as we go from 0.3 to 0.4, then it's going to start getting into the actual run until it reaches that value of 4. Now this is just to begin. Let's go ahead and see how we can get to a point of testing this theory. Now, because of this, we're going to have to change our script up a little bit. Remember, our script is only controlling whether the player is moving or not moving based on that velocity in this line of code right here. And so what I would like to do is simply comment out that block of code. A way that we can comment out a block of code is by typing / and then Shift 8 to use an asterisk, and you'll notice that it comments out everything afterward, but I don't want it to comment out this print or these curly brackets. So I'm going to come to this line here, and I'm going to type in Shift 8 for that asterisk, and then / again. You'll notice that this is now commented out, but we still have our print and our curly braces. Let's hit Control S to save that, and then let's move into our next clip and talk about how we can set up the blend tree through script.